All right, folks, welcome back. Today we're going to go ahead and create this P-shaped object using the coordinate method. So to get this started off, we're going to open up our warm-up activity. This is the first exercise in this model, so we'll get a new part studio, and we're going to call this new part studio. We'll rename it, and we'll call it coordinate practice. All right, and I'm going to drag that all the way to the left because that's going to be my current document or current tab that we'll use. Hold on, all the way over there. There you go. That'll be my current tab that we'll use for the next couple days. So the new sketch we're going to create is going to be on the front plane, and we'll go ahead and view normal by tapping the letter N and hide those planes by tapping the letter P. You can see in our small window up front top, you should have a paper like this giving you instructions on how to create this, and we're going to follow the steps as outlined here, given our coordinates. Feel free to write on the paper, that helps a lot. So, for example, step 1 here says A origin. Well, our origin is right here on the paper. That's a big fat dot. So we're going to call that A. Line AB starts at the origin, goes 4 horizontal to the right. So A, B, that makes this point B. This is going to be line AB, and that's going to be 4 units horizontal to the right. So I'm going to click on my line tool, click and release, move the mouse over. I'll zoom in a little bit because it looks like my unit's pretty small. So I go 4 units to the right, and that's line AB. So let's drag that down here, and I can, on my paper, I'll just highlight that I did line AB and scratch it off on my checklist. Did line AB. Next on my checklist is line AC. I'm going to start at the origin. So start at the origin, go 17 up. So 17 vertically up. So line from the origin up 17. The enter key, it's bigger than my screen, so I'm going to have to zoom out. Tap the escape key to get my tools back. So there we have it. So that's line AC. So I'm A, point C. And so far, so good. That's pretty easy. Scratch that off. Line CE is 8 horizontal to the right. C. Okay, so this is point C. So that means that from there, that makes this point E. I need to go 8 units to the right. Click and release. Click and release. We're going to go 8 to the right. Okay. Takes care of that one. And then line, what comes next? So line CE is done. Line BD. Well, there's B. B only connects to A and something else, so I guess that makes this D. So line BD, 8 vertical. So get my line tool, click on the point, go up some distance vertically, type in 8, enter. And that means I've got line BD done. I'll mark that off on my paper. Now we have line BD done. Okay, check did that. Line DF. Line DF. Well, that's from point D, and again, only one direction to go. So that must mean this is point F. That's 5 horizontal. So it's going to be a line across here. Line. Click and release. Click and release. Oops, Forgot to put the dimension on, so just no big deal. Hit the dimension tool and 5, enter. Okay. And line DF horizontal. Okay, so that's done. So I can check that off on my list. Point I. So we've got everything that can be defined with lines, or is defined with lines, is drawn. So now we're on to defining all these points. Points need to be defined with a horizontal measurement, location. All they have is they're just a dot in space with a location. So we're going to create a point at 4 in the X direction and 14 in the Y direction. So we'll get a point. I'm just going to put it anywhere. Doesn't really matter. So we're going to be using the dimension tool to dimension that. So 4 in the X direction and 14 in the Y direction. So click on the origin, click on the object, and 14. All right. So that defines that point. And you see that point will not move. You might notice that I actually have 2 4s. Looks like I probably could have deleted that second 4. Didn't need it. Of course, this point is free to move. So let's go ahead and delete those both. Go ahead and delete or dimension that as 4. So this point, rather than adding an extra dimension, I'm going to apply a vertical constraint. I can do that by tapping the V on the keyboard, clicking the V from the drop down menu, vertical from the drop down menu, or just hovering near it. So I could actually take this, hover that point, and if I let go while that line is dashed, that dashed line is there yellow, it'll lock into position without having to put another dimension there. So that was point I. Mark that on my paper. Scratch that off because it's done. Now we're going to go on to point J. Point J is over 4 again, up 11. So it's not as tall. So that must be this. This is J. So let's go ahead and put point J in. So it's going to be, again, lined up with the others. So let's just hover over it, move down, click and release. If I escape, go to move that. See, it can move up and down, but not side to side. So we need to put a dimension on it. I click and release on that. Click and release on the origin. Point J is 11 high. Scratch that off. It's done. So point I and J are done. If I want to, I can go ahead and connect those with a line because those are fully defined. So line IJ is now done. Now we're going to move on to point K. Point K is 7 to the right and up 14. Well, it looks like 14 has already been used. That's good for us. So we're going to go over 7. That's to the right of I and J, and up 14, which is where I is. So this is point K. Let's go ahead and do that in CAD. So I'm going to click the point tool. I'm going to hover over point I, go to the right of point I, click and release. And then we'll go ahead and dimension that because that is, if I escape right now and try to drag that around, you can see it moves left to right, but it can't go up and down. So that means we need to have a left to right measurement. So we're going to go from the origin to the point. And that is supposed to be, point K is 7 horizontally. And let's stretch these out so I can see better. So that isn't going anywhere. So point K is done. We can connect points I and K if we want at this time. And that should result in a black line. And it did. Awesome. So we can scratch that out on our list. Point L is over 7 up 11. So it lines up with point K, and it's up 11, which is actually the same as the height as point J. So that means this one is vertically aligned with K and horizontally aligned with J. So I'm just going to need, I don't need to put any dimensions at all. I just need the point. And we'll hover over K, and then we'll hover over J and find the point where both of them are pre-selected. And click a release, and you'll see that that doesn't move. I hit the escape key, try to drag it around, not go anywhere, which means this line can be drawn. So let's go ahead and get that line tool again, and click a release, click and release. There it is. See, that's turned black. We're doing great. Almost done. That was point L. So we're done with point L. Point M is over 8 up 13, and point N is over 8 up 12. So that would be, make these points M and N. M is above N. We can see that it has a greater Y value, so M is above and N is on the bottom. So that makes this M and N. They're both over 8. So let's go ahead and do those at the same time. Click and release, and then directly below it, click and release. So those are points M and N. 8. We've previously used an 8. There's actually an 8 here already, so we can just line up with that, and that'll lock those in place left to right. Now we just need to align them vertically, which we have yet to use a vertical constraint of 12 and 13, so we'll need to put a dimension on from the origin to the first one, which was 12, and from the origin to the second one. Second point is 13. Now that defines M and N. Is done. So we can connect those dots. There we go. Sweet. Almost done. Last thing to do is point H and G, which are again vertically aligned. So that's sweet. That's easy. I can use that. I'm going to go ahead and take those points and create 2 points that are vertically aligned with each other. So there you have it. And now we will go ahead and give them the dimensions they need. They need to be over 11, so both of them are over 11. We'll have to use the dimension tool. So 11 in our estimate direction. Let's go ahead and put that underneath 11. And 10 and 15. So the bottom one, H, is going to be 10, and the top one, G, is going to be 15. So let's see, get my dimension tool from the origin. So the first one is 10, and the second one is 15. Everything's fully constrained. We try test by pulling on those points. They don't go anywhere. The line tool, connect the points. We should be turning black. And it's awesome. Perfect. Done. So I can scratch off all of my points. Done. And that's all she wrote.